After 65, many people begin to understand that peace is not only found in a quiet house. Sometimes, peace is found in a quiet answer. A person can spend most of their life explaining everything, explaining why they spent money, explaining why they felt hurt, explaining why they made certain plans, explaining why they were worried. Then one day, while sitting alone with a cup of coffee that has already been reheated twice, they may think, "I wish I hadn't said so much." This story is not about turning away from family. It's not about becoming cold, bitter, or suspicious. Family can be a blessing. Many adult children truly care. Some care so much that they accidentally become full-time supervisors, which is loving, but also enough to make a person want to hide in the pantry. This is about privacy. After 65, privacy is not rejection, it is protection. Margaret and Robert learned this in different ways. Margaret was a widow who loved her children, her small garden, and a peaceful afternoon when nobody asked her where she kept the extra batteries. Robert was a retired mechanic who believed most problems could be fixed with patience, common sense, and sometimes a roll of tape that had no right being involved. They lived different lives, but both discovered the same truth. Love needs warmth, peace needs boundaries, and not every private matter belongs in a family conversation. Subscribe to the channel for more gentle stories about aging with wisdom, dignity, and calm. And if this message feels familiar, comment, "I'm learning to protect my peace." The first thing to be careful with is the full picture of your money. Margaret had always handled money carefully. She wasn't rich, but she was steady. Her bills were paid. She had savings for emergencies. She gave birthday gifts to the grandchildren, donated a little to church, and once in a while treated herself to lunch with friends. One Sunday afternoon, her daughter asked if she was doing all right financially. The question sounded kind, so Margaret answered honestly. Then she answered too honestly. She mentioned her savings. She talked about her monthly income. She explained which account was for emergencies. She even mentioned a small investment she had kept for later. At first, her children looked relieved. Then, slowly, everything changed. When Margaret bought a new recliner, her son asked if she really needed it. When she planned a short trip with friends, her daughter wondered if that was wise. When she helped her grandson with car repairs, someone reminded her she had to think about the future. Margaret wanted to say, "I am thinking about the future. I plan to sit in it comfortably," but she only smiled. That was when she realized something painful. Once everyone knew too much about her money, her choices no longer felt like choices. They felt like requests waiting for family approval. There is a lesson in that. After 65, a person should not share their full financial picture with everyone in the family. This does not mean hiding important information from the people who truly need it. Someone trustworthy should know where legal papers are. A lawyer, financial advisor, spouse, or carefully chosen child may need certain details in case of an emergency. But not everyone needs every account. Not everyone needs every amount. Not everyone needs every plan. And not every purchase needs to be explained like a business proposal. Money after 65 represents more than numbers. It represents early mornings, long workdays, bills paid, children raised, sacrifices made, and dreams delayed. A person has the right to protect what they built. They also have the right to enjoy some of it. Margaret eventually learned to answer money questions with fewer words. "I'm managing. My bills are handled. I've made arrangements." That's something I discuss privately. At first, her family looked surprised. People often do when someone who used to explain everything suddenly discovers the beauty of a short sentence. But Margaret felt lighter. She hadn't stopped loving them. She had simply stopped turning her finances into a family meeting. The second thing to be careful with is the deepest family disappointments. This one is tender, because almost every older person carries at least one quiet hurt. A child who rarely calls, a relative who forgot too many birthdays, a son who only visits when something needs fixing, A daughter who says she's busy so often that busy starts to sound like a member of the family. Robert carried that kind of hurt. He had 2 sons. When they were young, they followed him everywhere. They asked questions, borrowed tools, and believed he could fix anything. For a while, Robert almost believed it too. But time changed things. The boys grew up. Their calls became shorter. Their visits became rushed. Holidays became complicated. Robert missed being needed, though he would never have said it that plainly. Men like Robert often hide feelings behind comments about the weather, the lawn, or the price of coffee. One Thanksgiving, the hurt slipped out. At dinner, while everyone was passing food, Robert said, "You boys don't really need me anymore, do you?" The room became quiet. His older son looked uncomfortable. His younger son looked defensive. The grandchildren suddenly became very interested in the mashed potatoes. Robert kept talking. He mentioned missed calls. He mentioned the time he was sick and no one came until 2 days later. He mentioned how lonely the house felt since their mother had passed. Everything he said was true. But truth, spoken at the wrong moment, can still bruise the room. After dinner, his sons left early. Robert sat alone and felt worse, not better. That became his lesson. Deep family disappointment should not be repeated in every conversation. Pain needs a place to go, but the dinner table may not be that place. Neither is every phone call. Neither is every holiday gathering. This does not mean pretending nothing hurts. It does not mean accepting neglect or mistreatment. If someone is suffering deeply, they should talk to someone safe, such as a trusted friend, counselor, doctor, faith leader, or caring family member. But repeating old wounds again and again can make distance wider. Robert slowly learned to speak differently. Instead of saying, "You never care," he said, "I'd really like to hear from you more often." Instead of listing every disappointment, he made one clear request: a short call once a week. That was all. It was not perfect. His sons did not suddenly become saints. Life is rarely that generous, but the conversations softened. Robert felt less like he was begging for love, and more like he was asking for connection with dignity. After 65, peace often comes from knowing which hurt needs to be spoken and which hurt needs to be healed somewhere quieter first. The third thing to be careful with is inheritance. Few topics can make a family act polite and strange at the same time, quite like future money. Everyone says they don't care. Everyone says they only want what is fair. Then someone mentions the house, the jewelry, the old watch, or the cabinet nobody wanted, until it suddenly became meaningful. Margaret made this mistake. She had already made her plans. Her papers were organized. Her will was written. She had spoken to the right people. Everything was handled. Then one afternoon, her daughter asked, "Mom, have you decided what happens later?" Margaret could have said, "Yes, everything is taken care of." Instead, she explained. She talked about who would receive certain items. She mentioned the house. She described how she wanted her jewelry divided. She explained her reasons, believing this would prevent confusion later. But the mood changed. No one shouted. No one argued. That would have been easier to recognize. Instead, people became careful. Her son asked small questions. Her daughter became quiet. A grandchild made a joke about the grandfather clock, but it sounded less like a joke and more like someone checking whether a door was locked. In the weeks that followed, little comments appeared. "I thought Dad wanted me to have that." "Did you already promise the ring to her? Are you sure that won't upset anyone?" Margaret realized she had invited tomorrow's conflict into today's living room. Inheritance is not only about things. It is about memory, emotion, fairness, grief, pride, and old sibling rivalries that may have been resting for years, apparently waiting for someone to mention furniture. So the lesson is simple. Keep inheritance plans private, except with the people who truly need to know. Make your plans legal. Make them clear. Tell a trusted person where the documents are. Review them when life changes. Do not leave confusion behind, if you can prevent it. But you do not need to discuss every detail with everyone while you are still alive. Margaret began saying, "My plans are made, and they're in order." If someone pushed, she said, "I'm not discussing the details now." Simple, calm, final. She was not being cold. She was keeping her family from treating her like a future document instead of a living person. And after that, visits became easier. They talked about meals, grandchildren, doctor appointments, weather, and the neighbor's tree that leaned suspiciously close to the fence. In other words, normal family business. The fourth thing to be careful with is fear. This may be the most delicate one. After 65, fear can become louder. Not because older people are weak, but because they have seen enough of life to know that things can change quickly. A person notices the stairs more. They notice names taking longer to arrive. They notice friends getting sick. They notice the medicine cabinet becoming crowded enough to need its own address. Robert noticed these things too. One morning, he had a dizzy spell. It passed quickly, but it frightened him. That evening, his daughter called, and he told her everything. He said he was scared of falling. He said his memory worried him. He said he didn't want to become a burden. His daughter loved him deeply, but love, mixed with worry, can turn into control very fast. The next day, she called 3 times. Then came suggestions. Remove the rugs. Stop driving at night. Use grocery delivery. Get a medical alert button. Consider moving closer. Robert understood the concern, but he suddenly felt less like a father and more like a project. That became his lesson. Guard your fears and vulnerabilities. Share them wisely. This does not mean staying silent when something is serious. If someone feels unsafe, confused, depressed, neglected, or unwell, they should speak up and get help. Real problems need real support. But not every fear needs to be poured out in its rawest form to everyone. Some people comfort. Some people panic. Some people take over. Robert learned to give his fears shape before sharing them. Instead of saying, "I'm afraid I can't manage," he said, "I had a dizzy spell, and I'm making a doctor's appointment." Instead of saying, "My memory is failing," he said, "I've noticed a few changes, and I want to check them properly." Instead of saying, "I don't want to be a burden," he said, "I'd like to make a simple emergency plan." The truth was still there, but it had direction. It invited help without surrendering independence. That matters. After 65, a person can ask for support and still keep their dignity. They can be honest without handing over the steering wheel of their life before they are ready. Margaret and Robert did not become secretive people. They still loved their families. They still shared meals, laughter, memories, and occasional opinions nobody requested. Some habits are too old to retire, but they became more careful. Margaret stopped explaining every dollar. Robert stopped bringing old hurt into every visit. Margaret kept her inheritance plans clear but private. Robert shared his fears with the right people in the right way. Their lives did not become perfect. Bills still arrived. Knees still complained. Children still disappointed them sometimes. The television remote still had too many buttons, possibly as a test of faith. But their homes became calmer. Their conversations became lighter. They felt less watched, less judged, less exposed, more like themselves. That is the quiet lesson of aging. Peace is not only found in silence. Peace is found in what a person no longer feels forced to explain. After 65, it is all right to say, "I've handled that." It is all right to say, "I'm not ready to discuss it." It is all right to say, "Thank you for caring, but I'll decide." Those sentences are small, but they carry strength. No shouting, no bitterness, just a steady boundary. A good boundary says, "I love you, but I am still a person. I may be older, but I am not invisible. I may need help sometimes, but I still deserve respect. I will share what is necessary, but I will not give away my peace. That is not selfish. That is wisdom. So if you are over 65, be generous with love. Share laughter. Share memories. Share kindness. Share the stories that warm the room. But be careful with the private parts of your life. Your money does not need an audience. Your old wounds do not need to perform at every gathering. Your inheritance plans do not need to become a family debate while you are still here. Your fears do not need to be handed to people who will turn them into control. Choose trusted people. Make responsible plans. Ask for help when help is needed. But keep your peace close. Because a peaceful life after 65 is not built by telling everyone everything. Sometimes it begins when a person finally understands what deserves to be spoken, what deserves to be handled carefully, and what deserves to stay safely within their own heart. Subscribe to the channel for more gentle reflections on aging with strength, humor, and peace. And tell us in the comments, what is one thing you've learned to keep private for your own calm? Because sometimes the wisest thing a person can say is not a long explanation. Sometimes it is simply, I've taken care of it.